Hello friends, I'm Stephanie and I'm here to welcome you to the 8th episode of Sacred Sounds, the One License team's educational podcast to help you learn more about sacred music, old and new. You can find all episodes of Sacred Sounds on YouTube Music and the One License Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X to see the latest from One License. In this episode, David and I explore the intricacies of Deanna Witkowski's setting of Comfort Ye. Madison explains the Reformation roots of Old Hundredth, and Siobhan walks us through the process of making a manual submission when we can't find a song in the database. Thanks for coming on this journey with us. The One License team had a blast creating this episode, and we just hope that you have as much fun listening to it. It's time for a liturgical listening party where we introduce you to a brand new piece of sacred music.
Hi everyone and welcome back to Liturgical Listening Party. I'm David. Yes, you've heard me every week, and I'm here every week with Stephanie. And today we will be listening to or talking about Comfort Ye by Deanna Witkowski.
Now, David, if I want to go find Deanna Witkowski's Comfort Ye, where do I find that?
You would go to her website, which is deannawitkowski.com. That's DeannaWitkowski.com, which is COM, in case you didn't know.
I was wondering. I saw that.
Oh, and then you go to the store tab, select the score, then you scroll down to Comfort Ye. And when you're there, you'll find two versions. There's a SAB and piano, and then there's an SATB and piano.
And for anyone who is really eager to check this out, we're going to put links to Deanna's website and store in the notes for this episode. So, wherever you're catching us, YouTube, Facebook, or our RSS feed, just look for the links in the video description and click on that. It'll send you right there. So, David, give us a little overview. What exactly is Deanna Witkowski's Comfort Ye?
It's a jazz setting of the text, Comfort Ye, my people. I know that from, is that in Handel's Messiah?
It's taken from Isaiah. So Handel does include the text from Isaiah in his oratorio. But this Comfort Ye is a hymn adapted from the same text. So the text for the hymn of Comfort Ye, my people was actually written by Johann Olieris in 1671. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't sound like Johann wrote that in English, you're right. Because it took Catherine Winkworth to come along and translate the text of Comfort Ye, my people, way back in 1862. So this text has already come down to us from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so good. The feel that she put on this text, it feels new, like refreshing in a way. Mm-hmm. Like you wouldn't think that it was like a translation of an 1871 text, 1671. Just kidding.
It doesn't feel like something written in 1671. It's Deanna's original melody her original jazz harmonies, and she's paired her original music with a public domain text. So for all of our listeners out there, that's how these public domain materials work. That's why Madison and I do our little public domain chance of a lifetime segment, just to bring these materials into the consciousness, because we still use these things. We can still make them new. And just like Deanna translated this centuries old holy text for us into a new medium, we can all, as musicians, as artists, we can all do that with public domain material.
Exactly. So what Stephanie is saying to all you inspiring musicians is you should go look for this holy text or sets of this holy text that's in the public domain, or any text in the public domain, and make your own composition, and then go spread God's word and have people use it in their worship services.
And just to specify a little bit too, Deanna's setting is for piano and choir. So like David mentioned, she has two versions. There's the SAB, or soprano alto bass, and SATB, soprano alto tenor bass versions. In the recordings that you'll see on Deanna's website, she has a little bit of light percussion added, but really the heart of this setting is the piano and voices.
Yeah, we'll get into a lot of that later, I believe.
Just to start us off, let's talk about the form of the piece. And when we say form in music, what we really mean is the different sections of music and what order those sections come in. Form-wise, what are we looking at, David?
Well, it's pretty straightforward, this one, yeah. There's like an intro, and then there's verses. We'll get more into what that means, but yeah, there's a piano intro, there's verses. Get into that stuff. What is that? What more is there?
It's in a strophic form. So every verse of the song reuses the same music, but with different text. So just like in a pop song on the radio, every verse has different words, but you're hearing the same music over and over again. That's what's happening with this hymn text. Deanna is taking the strophic hymn text and has composed music that's about one verse in length, and then in each verse, that music comes back to us with some slight adjustments to keep it interesting.
Even practically, like to adjust the melody to fit the different words of each verse, right?
Now, starting off with that piano intro, it's a really short intro. It's only 8 measures. And in those 8 bars, she introduces the main melodic motif that the whole setting is based on, and the chord progression that the harmonies of the verses kind of derive from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that melody is going to be stuck in my head forever. It's so catchy. I was telling Stephanie earlier, when I was listening to the recording, I had to physically fix my face because it was stuck.
It's so compelling. It pulls you in right away. And we'll talk more about the chord progression that lays under it in just a moment. But I think the reason it pulls me in is in that 8-bar phrase, the first 4 measures are that beautiful flowing melody. What happens is in the second 4 measures, Deanna repeats that melody an octave down and slightly reharmonizes it so that it feels like impulse. It feels like pushing you onward.
Yeah, you know what I like about this melody? Like rhythmically, it starts on the offbeat, like on the upbeat, the syncopation, but then it lands on like the 1 on the second half of the melody.
It's a pattern of tension and resolution, right?
Yeah, that's what that is. In the beginning, like that syncopation, and then landing on the 1.
It pulls you forward. I don't know if I want to say pulls or push, but anyway, it moves you forward until you land right on that downbeat and you're like, oh, I'm home.
Oh man, what you just said makes so much sense right now to me in this moment. So landing on the 1 is one way of feeling resolved. And then when it lands on the 1, it's on a sustained, right? It's on like the, on the 2, and then it resolves on the 1. 2, 1. That's 2 levels of like resolution that's happening without you even knowing it. And that makes you as a listener feel like, oh, I'm home, or like I landed in like home base.
Guys, this is just the first 8 bars we're talking about.
I know. Sorry, this is going to be a long one.
So like we mentioned, after you have that 8-bar intro, the piece is strophic. Deanna uses verses 1, 3, and 4 of Winkworth's text. And what she does is put a restatement of, I'm going to say this slowly, a restatement of the second half of verse 1 at the very end. So really, text-wise, what you have is verses 1, 3, 4, second half of verse 1. And then when she adds the restatement of the second half of verse 1 at the end of the song, you almost don't even notice that happening because the end of verse 4 flows so smoothly into that restatement. Each verse is made up of 4 phrases. They're like 4 actually very lengthy phrases. And they're in a very general, I'm going to paint with a broad brush here, but a general AABA form. And what we mean by that is you have a section of music, A, then you repeat that section of music, another A. Then you have something new, that's B, and then you repeat the original section, A. So you have this general AABA form, but there are slight differences between the endings of all 3 of those A sections. Again, just for the sake of variety, but also for the sake of accommodating the realities of the text.
I mean, that's pretty straightforward in terms of like the AABA things happening. There are, like you said, piano interludes between the verses. And like being a jazz piece and having the chords in the score written on top, it's like almost 100% guaranteed that the people playing this won't exactly play what Deanna's playing, but they're just going to fill in those little spaces with what they feel in the moment, right? Like, or having chords above the score, it's almost like an invitation to fill out this section how you want to fill out or what you're feeling in the moment. And I'm sure people are playing it different every single time they play the piece. So,
and then at the very end, after we get through all of these verses, she gives us this 8-measure piano tag recapitulating the main motifs that we've heard. So there's this very pleasing symmetry. It balances the introduction exactly, that 8-measure balance. And just as she pulls us into the melody with that introduction, she very gently like lands us on the ground with
yeah.
8-bar tag.
And because the melody motif is being restated, like it's just going to stay in your head for the rest of the day.
So we've got this very straightforward and yet pleasing form. Let's talk a little about the texture of Deanna's Comfort, Comfort Ye.
Yeah, there's different ways of that Deanna has incorporated these verses to be sung. So there's a solo, and then there's a unison section, and then there's like harmony happening later in the song too. There's one really cool part where the soloist is singing and then like the other singers are singing, like restating what the solo does, and then they come together. It's so cool the way that that's weaved into that particular verse.
It's such a gradual but like beautiful expansion because it goes from just that soloist to, okay, we've got the choir singing in unison with the soloist. Then we've got the choir breaking into harmony. And then we've got the choir breaking into this, rather elaborate polyphony.
Yeah.
And it happens so gradually, you almost don't notice it until after it's happened.
It's cool because like if you were to take the instrumentals out, there would be no break in sound. Because it's the solo sings, and then at the end of the solo, even before the solo ends the phrase, the other singers come in. In this part, the solo sings a phrase. Before that phrase ends, the other singers join in and kind of mirror that rhythm, but they're doing it in harmony. And then at the end of their phrase, the soloist comes back in while the other singers are holding a chord. So it's cool. It's like literally if you take out the instrumentation, there would be no break in sound.
Deanna is a jazzer, so I think this is very much in the vein of like when Coltrane talked about sheets of sound. I think it's very much those sheets of sound that jazzers aim for, because there's always this constant pleasing, like sound waves washing over you.
Yeah. And it's cool how like it does it in that rhythm that I was talking about that's so catchy. The beginning of each phrase starting in that on the upbeat, and then it's just so good.
The piano beneath it, like you mentioned, you can take out the instruments and still be very satisfied with what's going on in the voice. And yet the piano is also satisfyingly dense. She gives us these constant surprises of jazz harmonies, so that likewise, if you took the singers away, you could probably still listen to the piano part and be like, that's some great jazz piano.
Yeah, totally. And if you were to take the singers away and just listen to that piano happening, it elicits in you like a melody. Like you would just start improvising on top of those chords. It like leaves just enough room for that melody or whatever's happening in the verse to shine, whether it be the solo or the choir together in unison, or the harmony, or that like back and forth conversation.
And vocally, for as dense as it gets, for as complex as her harmonies can be, she avoids the extremes of either register, high or low. She moves throughout the range of each voice part without ever making you go into uncomfortable territory. The piano kind of matches those vocal ranges, so it's not obtrusive. They just feed each other in this very comfortable place.
Yeah, totally. I mean, range-wise, if you're talking singers, it feels like it's in the same range as like a comfortable congregational hymn.
She's writing for specific voice parts.
Yeah.
It's almost a conversation because the piano and the voices are kind of consistent in the range. It becomes a conversation between them.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, right? Because otherwise it would be like four people speaking at the same time, and then you wouldn't understand what's happening. When I used to work with jazz musicians. I still do once in a while, but they're the ones who, in working with them, I learned how to fill the spaces. Because I didn't even know that there were spaces, or I was made more aware of the spaces that exist within music. Going back to the idea of sheets of sound, it's like the sound doesn't break. The voices are in that space, and then when they're not in that space, there's like accompaniment, and then when the accompaniment drops out, the voices are back in. Like, but it's done in a tasteful way where it doesn't feel like four people speaking at the same time, like I said before.
They're not speaking over each other, but with each other.
Yeah, and they complement each other.
It really is a back and forth. So let's talk about, we talked about the form of the text. When Deanna creates her original music for this text, she makes, as every composer would, she makes decisions about how to match that text with any given notes. And I think she does this in a really great way. It's a syllabic setting, and what we mean by that is generally one syllable of text per note. That's not a hard and fast rule, but usually that's what you see in this piece. And Deanna's setting is very natural. It mimics spoken language, and the rhythms feel like you could just talk them even. You almost don't have to sing. They would just flow naturally out of spoken speech.
Yeah, it's so good. I was thinking about like the message and how that fits into the melody that she's created, and just the first phrase, like coming off on that upbeat, to comfort ye my people, because it's so comforting the way that that's set in, like, and that's just rhythm, and then when you add the melody on top of that, it is so comforting. So like it's comforting, and it's done in such a modern take. Just that first phrase, it like sets the tone for the entire piece.
It almost feels like a lullaby. We might not associate lullabies with jazz music, but maybe we would.
Yeah, totally. And all of that like matters, right? Like the way that you say, even in spoken speech, when I'm speaking to people, like when we're speaking to people, if someone's having a hard time, I'm not going to rush up to them, grab their shoulders and be like, comfort ye. Obviously, that's not going to bring the message home, right? So the way that she's tastefully done it here from the very first phrase, it's just really good.
The other thing I'll say in terms of the comfort that this vocal part gives us is that it's a very consonant vocal part. For as complex as the jazz harmonies beneath those vocal parts are, the vocal parts themselves are mostly diatonic, and the piano carries the chromatic pitches. The bass does carry some chromaticism in verse 3. That's, the homophonic section when they split into harmony. And it's usually just passing tones or neighbor tones. So it's not chromaticism that's hard to find. It's chromaticism that lies right next to the melody note. And the alto carries a bit of chromaticism in verse 4, after they go into that polyphonic section where everyone is doing independent lines. It is a flat 6, which is a challenge of a pitch, so you have to watch out for that flat 6. And there's a lot of cross voicing between the C natural and the C sharp, so close to each other in that section. But apart from that, the vocal line is very consonant, and again, it should feel very natural.
Yeah. I mean, being a tenor, I was looking at the tenor line during the recording, and like you were saying, like some of those pitches they have the possibility of being challenging just because the chromatic steps that are happening, like the half steps that are happening. But it's cool. I mean, it's jazz, right? So it totally fits. Just tilt your heads. Is what I would say to my singers. Oh, you can't hear it? Just tilt your head and then you'll get that half step. Do what you have to do. Raise your eyebrows, tilt your head.
And then throughout the whole piece, Deanna's melody is just so fluid. For the vocal soloist who starts us off, she gives us a very flexible melody. It goes from D below the staff to third space C. And that's for the first two phrases, so it's not an overly lengthy, taxing kind of solo either. And the full choir enters in measure 24. They're singing in unison with the soloist then. And it's really cool to hear the whole group enter at that point saying, "Speak ye to Jerusalem," as if the prophetic message itself is spreading.
Yeah, I like that.
One person tells another, and soon we are all aware of the glory of God.
Yeah, those are like conscious choices that were made, right? Like whenever composers are doing their thing, who sings what, where, and like where they all sing together, like will definitely emphasize the message that you want to give.
Yeah, I think Deanna's decision to have the choir enter at that point and in unison is very impactful.
And this might have nothing to do with the piece itself, but the recording that's on Deanna's website of the choir singing is so good. What I like, and I was telling stuff earlier, like, because it's written syncopated, what I liked was that the soloist interpreted the music in a way where, like, if you listen to the singing, she's like scooping and dipping into the notes. It captures the feel of the piece really well. And so to hear the other singers come in on that recording, you can hear the other singers skipping and dipping into the notes with the soloist. It's just great. It was great to hear that group of singers.
We talked about how the melody is so pleasing. The harmony underneath it absolutely backs that up. And from the very beginning, the piano intro establishes the harmonic language and the most frequently used chords. So in that 8-measure phrase, let's talk about this chord progression in just the first 8 bars because it's the foundation of everything that follows. It's basically, like we mentioned with the melody, 4 measures, and then 4 measures with a slight variation. In the first half of that piano intro, so the first 4 measures, we have an E flat 2 chord to a G7 sharp 9 to an A flat chord to a D flat 7. In the second half of those 8 measures, we have E flat 2 to G7 sharp 9 to A flat, but now the last chord is different. It's a B flat 7, along with some extended pitches there that we'll leave off the table for now. Mm-hmm. And the reason I recite this to you, the reason I bring it up, is because in those first 4 bars, in the first half of the phrase, the A flat chord functions as 5 of 7. So it functions as a secondary dominant. But in the second half of the phrase, that very same chord, that A flat chord, functions as a regular predominant chord. How cool is it that in a brief 8 bars, Deanna recontextualizes. She gives the chord a completely new identity. We hear almost exactly the same chords in the first 4 bars and the second 4 bars, but Deanna gives them different meanings and identities according to their function in relation to the tonic. And there's a theology lesson in there somewhere that I have yet to suss out, because all of us gain new identities in our relation to the tonic, if you will, the one of the universe.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Hashtag jazz. Theologizz. That's awesome. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that second A flat in the second half, that A flat just leads to that B flat, which is, I don't know the technical terms. What do you call it? Dominant, the dominant, just to come back to home base.
You're going from a secondary dominant, which, maybe quote unquote doesn't belong in the key, right? Mm-hmm. To a good old fashioned predominant. It's so subtle.
Yeah. I don't know. I just see these as a 4 and a 5. The 4 And then the 5 comes back to the 1.
And the other things that I think we could take away from just that piano introduction, because it establishes the harmonic language of the whole piece, we see that Deanna is going to use a lot of borrowed chords. Those borrowed chords are important throughout. And what we mean by borrowed chords are chords that come from the minor scale when we're playing in a major key, or vice versa. Most of Deanna's Comfort E is in E flat major. She's borrowing some chords from E flat minor. So those chords don't necessarily belong in E flat major, they belong in E flat minor, but she's quote unquote borrowing them to make the harmony interesting. And we see her do that a lot, especially using a major 3 and a major flat 7 throughout the piece very frequently. She establishes the harmonic rhythm of the piece. So generally speaking, we hear 2 chords per measure throughout, though that's not a constant. So there's our piano introduction harmony. And then in the A prime section, these A natural and B natural chords pop up, and neither of those chords is native to E flat major.
It makes it interesting because it grabs your attention. It comes out of nowhere and you're like, huh? But then it points you to the A flat for that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that movement by half step that just...
straight into that next section. Hashtag Theologies.
And what's interesting is there we expect to hear the A flat and B flat chords where the A and B chords appear, but Deanna resolves to the A flat and B flat chords after this brief diversion. So it's as if we overshoot or experiment with the wrong chord to get attention and then sink into the more comfortable harmony, which again, this kind of seeking, searching, Theologies 101, right?
Theologies.
And our B section is usually the point of each verse when we have a texture change. So in the first verse, we go from soloist to all the choir in unison. In the third verse, we go from all the choir in unison to homophony, and in verse 4, we move from homophony to polyphony. But this B section is where those changes happen, and the harmony of the B section is just equally as exciting as much of a plot twist. She even starts it off with these 3 chords that you don't expect. She starts it off with this A7, A flat 7, A diminished. So the pitch sets of all 3 of those chords have significant overlap, but extremely different feelings. So the A major is your basic triad is A, C sharp, E. Then you've got A flat, C, E flat. And then you've got A, C, E flat for the diminished chord. So there's significant overlap in the pitches there, but the difference between a 7th chord a half step below, and then a diminished chord, almost as if it's another instance of searching or experimenting until we land on the A diminished as the, quote unquote right chord.
Yeah, and then all those variations just it gives it meat, hashtag jazz. There's a lot of meat happening. You feel satisfied as a listener just because you're getting a lot of textures in this melody that will tend to repeat itself. It's I've been to a fancy steakhouse a couple times and they give you a steak, but then you get different sauces or toppings on a steak. You'll get a flight of 3 medallions and each is crusted with a different crust, blue cheese or mushrooms. And then anyway, the point I'm getting at is this melody that seems comfortable, accessible, with all these chord changes happening and a lot of these super jazzy chords. It's you're getting different bites of the same melody. So you feel satisfied as a listener, where it's just not repeating the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. But you're getting those different textures and different flavors. There's blue cheese here, there's crusted mushroom over here, there's Parmesan crust on this one.
Because you really do. You have a pleasing sense of familiarity in that you can grasp onto the melody, but then when these harmonies recontextualize it, it's constantly new and constantly exciting.
Yeah.
The other really important thing that happens in the B section is that Deanna slows down the harmonic rhythm in the second half of the phrase to allow us to focus on the words there. And we talked about choices that composers make when they're setting these pre-existing texts. This is an important choice Deanna makes here. because in the second half of the B section, Deanna slows down the rate of chord changes. We were getting 2 chords per measure, and she basically then just gives 1 chord for 2 measures in the second half of the B section. And what that allows listeners to do is divert their attention from constantly changing harmonies and reapply their attention to the text message that is being sent and received. So the phrases that we hear there, of the peace that waits for them, now prepare for God away, now o'er earth is shed abroad. Those are the 3 sections or the 3 phrases she's really emphasizing. And I think that's the heart of Comfort Ye as a song.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's a really cool thing that happens before the final verse. There is a key change happening, and it kind of slaps you in the face, where you think it's going to land on the tonic, like the home bass, but then it lands on this, like, a funky 4, but it's, like, minor. I don't know, like, it lands on this funky chord. And then, like, it just goes on this little journey of, like, half steps until it ends up on, like, a B. And then you're like, oh, we were in E flat. And now if it's B, you know it's going to E. With that B acting as the dominant to go into the new key, which is E. It's very cool how that happens there.
Our old tonic was E flat. Our new tonic is E. They're a half step apart. When you change by a half step, you as a listener, whether you've ever had a single music lesson in your life or not, you hear that. You sense it.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, the new key is amazing. Or the transition to the new key.
So Deanna then takes us out in that final verse. She uses that new tonic of E natural to bring us into the promised land, to bring us home. Her final verse is in E major, so it just stays there through the remainder. I can't think of a more satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is going to make sense to anyone. Coming from a flat key to a sharp key, it's like so bright. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone. And I feel like the only people who will understand that are musicians, where like different keys have different feels. So like an E flat to me feels like very royal. Like flat keys to me feel like grounded, darker, bolder. And then like when you get into sharp keys, like from E flat to E, E to me is like super bright, sunshiny. It's like going from chocolate milk to like orange juice. Because flat keys to me are like chocolate milk. Like they coat your tongue, like they're heavy, they're dark, they have that luxurious feel to them, like velvet. And then like when you go into a sharp key, it gets bright.
Historically, music theorists have called flat keys sweet.
Oh.
Right? Sweet or soft. Mm-hmm. And sharp or natural keys have been hard.
Interesting.
So, which that then translates into our modern major minor distinction, but that's a whole other podcast. But the bottom line is those flatter notes have been softer and sweeter. And I think it's a perfectly logical way to describe that change from E flat to E.
Yeah, it just gets really bright. And like a song like Comfort Ye, it like brings more hope. Musicians, you guys know, like we all have our favorite keys. We all have our favorite chords and keys, and we know how each one feels. Yeah, it just brings a lot of like brightness to the end of it, which is perfect for Comfort Ye.
Absolutely. I think Deanna ends her piece in a perfect way. I can't think of a better way to conclude the piece than Deanna has already given us. So with that being said, let's all just go enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%. You guys know where to find it. It's at deannawitkowski.com. Again, you go to the store tab, select the score, scroll down to Comfort Ye. It's 2 versions that you can pick. It's just a really good thing to both listen to and to try to use. And I encourage, we encourage, right? We encourage any musicians, regardless of whether you're a jazz musician or not, just to give it a listen and see if you can incorporate it in your worship services, because it's definitely something to check out. So that being said, that's another episode of Liturgical Listening Party. What a great treat to both listen to and talk about Deanna Witkowski's piece, Comfort Ye, which is amazing. And we will catch you guys on the next one.
Join us for The Chance of a Lifetime, our exploration of traditional hymn tunes and the people who made them.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hey, Madison, thanks for coming on today. So for those of you who listen to our podcast, you know that in each episode, Madison's going to be telling the story of a different tune in the public domain.
That's right, Steph.
So for today, Madison, what do you have for us?
Today, I want to talk about one of the most popular melodies in the entire canon, Louis Bourgeois' Old Hundredth.
I'm guessing that New Hundredth isn't in the public domain yet.
Now that I wouldn't know about. If you find a New Hundredth, let me know and I'll check it out. In the meantime, Old Hundredth is regularly used in worship to accompany more texts than we can count.
That sounds like a big deal then.
One of the biggest. You'll probably recognize Old Hundredth as a tune commonly used with all people that on earth do dwell and praise God from whom all blessings flow.
I definitely know that one.
Most churchgoers do. The 8888 meter means it can be and has been matched with many, many texts over the centuries.
Centuries? Just how old is Old Hundredth?
Well, very. The earliest versions of Old Hundredth were printed between 1551 and 1554 as part of Louis Bourgeois' contributions to the Genevan Psalter.
I don't think we have that one in my church's pews.
Probably not. The Genevan Psalter, or Huguenot Psalter, was a collection of psalm translations written and compiled over a period of several years from 1539 to 1562.
And I thought I was a slow writer. I hope those translations were worth the wait.
16th century Christians seem to think so. Tens of thousands of copies of the Genevan Psalter were sold, mostly in Protestant cities because the translations were inspired by Protestant reforms. But the Psalter was even popular among Catholics for private devotion.
What made these translations so special?
They were, for their time, a new kind of psalm translation known as metrical psalms. Metrical psalms were translations of the ancient Hebrew psalm texts into modern languages, mostly French, that followed modern rhyme schemes and modern poetic meters.
I see. So the translators were not only translating from one language to another, but from ancient Hebrew poetic forms to modern European poetic forms.
Exactly.
So it wasn't as much of a musical project as a linguistic project.
Correct. The earliest Genevan Psalters only had text printed in them, not music. Translations were the work of Clement Marot and Théodore de Bèze, but many different composers contributed melodies to the Genevan Psalter over the years.
And Bourgeois' Old Hundredth was one of the melodies that was composed to accompany the metrical psalm translations.
Exactly. Bourgeois was a church musician hired by the city of Geneva to compose music for different churches and to direct a children's choir. You won't be too surprised to learn that the choir mainly sang metrical psalmody.
Let me guess. The melody that we know as Old Hundredth was composed for Psalm 100.
In that case, you would be exactly wrong.
Wait, what?
Bourgeois originally used that melody to set Psalm 134, but when the melody was later used in English metrical psalters, those English psalters used the melody for Psalm 100.
So you're going to call me a liar for being off by one continent?
Well, the important features of Old Hundredth are consistent no matter which psalm it's used with.
And what are the most important features of Old Hundredth?
Arguably, the most important musical features are the ones that define Old Hundredth as part of the metrical psalm setting tradition. Old Hundredth's rhythm moves entirely in quarter and half note, making it ideal for setting text clearly and slowly. For Protestant worshipers, declaiming psalm text clearly was the top priority. Such a slow, regular rhythm allows singers to do just that.
It makes sense that musicians would want to set the Word of God in such a way that everyone can understand it.
Exactly. And because Protestant theologians believe that it was important for congregants to participate in the singing, Old Hundredth and other metrical psalm melodies like it are composed to facilitate group singing.
How so?
Most importantly, the range of Old Hundredth is only one octave, from the fifth scale degree below the tonic to the fifth scale degree above the tonic. And within that range, the majority of the melody occurs between a third below the tonic to a third above the tonic. In other words, if you can sing a perfect fifth, and pretty much every human can, you can handle Old Hundredth.
For sure, I love singing this one.
That's by design. Bourgeois also structures the melody in a very easy to follow way. There are only 4 phrases, and the first three share the exact same rhythm. The fourth phrase is similar, just slightly longer. This means that large groups of singers can be confident of moving from note to note at the exact same time at an even pace.
Hence the meter part of metrical psalmody.
Precisely. The metered melodies are the defining feature of these psalm settings. The music is functional as well as inspiring.
It sounds like these psalm settings were as important spiritually as they were musically.
16th century Christians believe so. The Protestant reformer John Calvin established metrical psalmody as a critical part of Protestant worship. Calvin was a humanist and as such believed that music affects human behavior, which in turn affects the human mind and spirit. By this reasoning, healthy musical practices fostered healthy souls.
I can't argue with that reasoning. Was Calvin supportive of pretty much any music making then?
No, quite the opposite. Out of the famous Protestant reformers, he was one of the more skeptical of music making in church. That's why he was so strict about the type of music used during worship services.
Which is why the metrical psalm settings were regular and simple, so that they'd focus people's attention on prayer.
That's it. Calvin advocated monophony, where everyone sings the same notes at the same time, because he wanted people to concentrate on the prayer text as they were singing.
That kind of reminds me of what you said about Palestrina during the victory segment, that the Council of Trent made a rule forbidding polyphony that was so complex you couldn't understand the words.
Precisely. Protestant reformers and Catholic counter-reformers were responding to the same concerns, sometimes even in similar ways.
It's almost like studying history makes the world make sense.
In my experience, it almost always does.
Well, Madison, thank you for making Old Hundredth make sense to us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you. And as a reminder to all you listeners, in conjunction with our Chance of a Lifetime segment, One License is posting a public domain blog series. In each blog, we'll look at and expand on the hymn histories that we talk about here. And you can find all One License blogs at news.onelicense.net. Or you could sign up for the One License newsletter by visiting onelicense.net and have the blogs delivered to your email inbox each month. As part of the blog series, the One License team is offering listeners and readers the chance to become published authors as well. Each month, we're asking you folks to write your own text to accompany the public domain tune that we've discussed and email your original text to info@onelicense.net. The One License team will publish a few of our favorites in the next blog post so that we can all expand our poetic repertoire and worshipers all over the world can incorporate your inspired poetry into their praise. If you're interested in submitting a text, please do email it to info@onelicense.net with the subject line Sacred Sounds. And we're looking forward to hearing from you soon. Let's get back to data basics. In each episode, we'll offer a mini tutorial about the One License website and how to secure copyright permissions. If you have a question about any aspect of copyright usage, please email the One License team at info@onelicense.net with the subject line Sacred Sounds. We'll answer as many questions as possible in future episodes.
Hi again, everyone.
Hey, Siobhan. Thank you, as usual, for hanging out with us.
Oh, sure. Happy to. What do we want to talk about today?
So I thought I was really good at searching the database by now, but there are still some times when I can't find the song I'm looking for.
Okay, so you searched by title and contributor's last name in the title search bar. Is that right?
Absolutely. Typed them both in together.
Okay, well, if you search by title and contributor and you didn't find a match for the song that you want to use from your hymnal or from your musical score, then it's likely that the member publisher hasn't added that title to the One License database.
But as long as the piece is copyrighted by a member publisher, I have permission to use it, right?
No, remember that member publishers retain full control of their titles, so they choose which titles are licensed through One License. They choose which pieces to upload to the database. And only pieces in the One License database are covered by One License permissions.
So if I don't find my title in the One License database, I don't have permission to use it.
That's correct, but you can go to the member publisher directly and ask for permission.
Ooh, how?
Well, one way to do it is by contacting them by phone or email for permission. You'll find contact information on our member publishers page, or there's an online form on the One License website that you can use.
Wait, I didn't see a form on there.
Yeah, the website gives you the option to make a manual submission. Manual submissions are requests sent to the member publisher for them to add a specific title to the One License database.
So it's not a report.
No, not a report, just a request for the copyright holder to add the song to the database, and so give you permission to use it under your license. If the member publisher approves your request, the title will be automatically added to your report for the week that you select.
So if the request is approved, I don't have to take any further action.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I love checking things off my to-do list. So how do I make a manual submission?
So after you've done your title contributor search, scroll past the search results that aren't a match for what you're looking for, and at the bottom of that screen, you'll see a banner that says, "Didn't find the song you were looking for." And the banner has a couple of helpful hints for searching, and then a big purple button that says, "Manually submit a song."
I'm guessing that I should press that button.
You betcha. And then once you click on manually submit a song, the form pops up and you enter as much information as you can about the song in that form and select the copyright holder from the drop-down list of member publishers.
And if the song comes from my hymnal, do I need to send it to the hymnal publisher?
No, not the hymnal publisher necessarily. Remember that copyright claims are song-specific, separate from the hymnal. So you want to look at the copyright claim for the song that you want to use and then select that copyright holder from the list of member publishers, from that drop-down list. And then when the member publisher responds to your request, you'll receive a notification in your One License account in the notification center. You'll see that notification as a red bell icon in the purple banner across the top of the screen. And some member publishers will also respond by email in addition to the notification.
And the notification tells me whether the member publisher has approved or rejected my request.
Yes, and if they approve it, it gets added automatically to your report. If they reject it, they'll probably include some information in the rejection notification. And then member publishers have two other options besides accepting or rejecting your submission. They can pass your submission to another member publisher. This happens when the member publisher you've chosen doesn't own the copyright claim on that song, but they know that another One License member publisher does own it. In that case, the member publisher can pass your form to the correct copyright holder. And then there is a fourth option. The member publisher can substitute your manual submission with a database record that's already in the database.
Oh, does that mean I have to go report that record now?
No, you don't, because the substituted record, like the approved manual submission, gets automatically reported into your reported titles. You don't need to do anything further. But it's worth remembering that the substituted database record is what you should use in future to report that title.
So member publishers can accept the manual submission and add a new song to the One License database. They can substitute the manual submission with a database record that already exists. They can pass it to another copyright holder, or they can reject the manual submission.
Yes, right. And if you get a notification from a member publisher and you're like, I don't understand what this means, feel free to contact us because we can help you with that.
Absolutely. How long does it take to hear back from the member publisher?
It's a fair question. Each member publisher has their own timeline, and some respond within a day or two, and others take longer. It just depends on the member publisher. We recommend planning your music and making any manual submissions well in advance of when you might actually need to use it, the music.
What if I made a manual submission a few weeks ago and I really need a response fast now?
If it's been longer than 4 or 6 weeks, I think I would call or email the member publisher. You can let them know that there's a pending manual submission that requires attention. You can ask them to give you permission, by phone or email. The main thing is that if you haven't had a response to the manual submission, you don't have permission to use it yet, right?
But we've got a plan of action now, and that's the important thing.
That's right. Yeah. And any response that you receive about a manual submission remember, that's coming directly from the member publisher, so you can always be confident of an accurate answer.
Definitely good to know. Thank you so much, Siobhan.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank all of you so much for joining us on this episode of Sacred Sounds. It was a treat for the One License team to have these conversations, and we're looking forward to many more like them. Next time, for our Season 1 finale, David and I interview composer-producer Will Hickel of Nova Music, whose mission is to bring a contemporary Christian sound to the Catholic Church. Madison pretty much sums up the 16th century with Ein Feste Burg, and Siobhan tackles one last license holder question for the season. Just a quick reminder that you can find all episodes of Sacred Sounds on YouTube Music and the One License Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X to see the latest from One License. Until then, Lord, open our lips and our mouths will proclaim your praise.